Hey guys, welcome back to building a basic website from scratch. In this video, we're going to actually create one of our projects pages so that we can create an individual project page. But just to recap, this is what we've done so far. We've created the homepage here with our little bio of ourselves, our knowledge, kind of what we know, kind of linking to our skills. If we click here, it takes it to, learn more about me. And then you go to projects and you have all the different projects. You can click on see all projects, and then here you have all the projects as well. So we've created the about us page as well. Here, this follows the same pattern as what we did on the home page. We created kind of like a resume area where future employers may be able to see kind of where we're at, our education, our skills as well. And then you can also see, for example, our projects as well. And here you can see, for example, all the different projects that we have. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use and create one of these projects and an idea of how we would want these projects to look like when a user comes into our site, right? If they go to explore our project. So let's go ahead and we're going to pick something like, say, project 1. We're going to stick with project 1 for right now. So let's go ahead and open up and duplicate one of these pages. Again, we have our, there you go. And we're going to duplicate the projects page. And we're going to rename it to project1.html. If you click on project 1 here, then it takes you to project 1. We need to change that name, of course, and we need to make some changes to it. So let's go over here. We're going to select the project 1. Minimize that so that we have more space, and then here we're going to call it project 1 for our title name for the page. We have all the information that we need here. Header, main navigation. So let's go ahead and get rid of our main content. Let's go ahead and get rid of all of that. And let's do something different. If we refresh, this page has nothing now. We have our home page, kind of follows this pattern. About us follows this pattern. Projects kind of follows this pattern. Let's go ahead and do something a little bit different here when it comes down to our heading for our page. So let's go ahead and do something like div class container fluid div class row div class or you know what, in this case, because this is going to break away from the pattern that we have, let's go ahead and not use this. Sometimes we don't have to use our grid system. Let's go ahead and call it something like full width header. Okay, and then here we're going to create two content areas, one called description and another one called div class background. In our description, we're going to follow kind of what we've done in the past here, which is going to be have that H1 and maybe even a little bit of an intro. See that? Okay, let's go over here, paste that in there, and as always, soft toggle wrap. All right, so now we have these, which is kind of our description. And for our background, what we're going to do is we're going to use our image that we used for the first project, which is going to be project 1. Perfect. And then we're going to say alt will be description of the project 1 image. And then we're going to self-close that tag. If we go into the site, now we can see that this is kind of how this is looking like. So let's go ahead and start making some edits. Well, what I would like to do with this is make this image that we have down here be the background of this header area, and then make it full width and full height as well, so that when a user comes, this is the first thing that they see on the site. So let's go ahead and now we're going to add this component to our list of components that we've been creating on our on our list in CSS. So full width header, and of full width header. And of course we have that. We also have full width header, and then we have description. And then we also have full width header, and then we have background here as well. All right, so let's go ahead and make some of these changes here. We want, of course, our full width header to be a flex element, because what I want is I want this right here, this content area, to be in the middle of the page. So let's go ahead and call display flex, flex flow row wrap. And then we're going to say something like align items center, justify items center, and justify content center. All right, is align content, not justify items. All right, there you go. Align content, justify content. All right, perfect. If we refresh, now everything, see, kind of everything moved towards the middle. I want this header to be 100% width. So the width is going to be 100%, and the height is going to be 100 view height. And if you remember earlier on, we in this project, I kind of talked a little bit about different unit sizes. So I will also add a link for these specific unit sizes, like for example, percentages, view height, EMs, REMs, pixels. I'll have a link to that on the description as well below, so that if you want to explore a little bit more, you can do that there as well. So if we refresh that, we are making it sure that it's 100% view height. And let's go ahead and the height, let's do min height instead of height, because what happens, notice that these kind of moved a little bit more towards the top, trying to fit this content. Now that we changed it to min height instead, we're saying we want the minimum height to be 100 view height, but if there's more content, then we want it to kind of go down to the bottom a little bit more. So that's working perfectly. Let's go ahead and now our description. Let's go ahead and give that width, so max width of 48 REM. So 48 REM. One of the reasons why I use 48 REMs is because usually 48 REMs, in my opinion, for the fonts that I've used, gives me a good line length that makes it easier for users to read the content on that section. So that's why I usually use 48 REM. Now, one thing that we could do to kind of keep things consistent is let's go ahead and go all the way to the top and find our container, and say that our minimum width container, we can say, is going to be 1200 pixels, which is going to be kind of what we have right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So instead of 48 REM, we'll do 1200 pixels. Okay, as the max width that we have. And then, of course, we're going to do some padding left, 1 REM, padding right, 1 REM, so that those things can kind of be in place there. All right, that made it see a little bit bigger, but that's fine. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to get this image and put it in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use position absolute, and you'll see what happens when I use position absolute. Is going to move the image and remove it from just what we have in the content of the site. But notice that it actually moved it in front of the other description. So we need to give it a C index of -1. No values, just -1. And then when you refresh, you see that now we have that image on the background there. Now we want this background to be 100% width and then 100% height, right? And then we also wanted to, of course, align kind of what we did in the other ones, where we're aligning it to the top, right, bottom, and left. So we're actually aligning all these values to top, bottom, right, and left, see? So we want this image to kind of expand all the way through. Think about what we did, for example, on the homepage when we did this image. Similar concept, except that we're going to make a few changes to it so that this content below can be readable. So now the next thing that we need to do is we need to affect the image itself. So let's go ahead and change this. And then of course we'll do it to the image, and we want the image to be width of 100%. Of course we want a height of 100%. And see what's happening. We have it there. It's a little crunched up, right? So we need to make some changes to it, where we need to say something along the lines of object fit, and then we need to say cover, and then object position center. Want the images to be center. So see, that's no longer crunched up in that area there. And the next thing that we need to do is now we need to add kind of like an overlay over this content area here. So let's go ahead and do that. The way that we will do that is that we will use this background tag and say something like before. Again, that creates a new element. We're going to say display block overflow hidden. We're going to have to say that the content is an empty value right here. And then we're going to give it a background color. And we're going to use something called RGBA, which stands for red, green, blue, and alpha. Alpha is your opacity channel, which goes from 0, which is clear, to 1, which is super dark, or the full alpha, or 100% opacity, meaning that you can see the full color. 0 is you cannot see it anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the default values for black, which is 0, 0, 0, and then the last one is going to be our alpha value, which is going to be 0.8. If later on maybe we can try to change that color to maybe use our orange instead, so that it can follow with the branding, but we'll see that in just a little bit. We're also going to, now what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and refresh this, and you cannot see it. It's there, but you can't see it. The reason why is because this alpha channel, or this background overlay, is behind the image. So we need to do something very similar to what we did on the image itself. So we're going to have to say something like position absolute, top 0, right 0, left bottom 0, left 0. And then we're going to say something like width 100%, height 100%. And because we wanted to go above it, we're going to use a C index of 1. C index, I'm also going to add it to the description so you can read up more about C index. But Z index can also only be used when you use position absolute. So let's go ahead and refresh this. And now you can see that we have this overlay over our content area right here. See? Now, if we were to look at this, one thing that we might want to do is maybe change this color to white so that it pops. So let's go ahead and go in here, and in our full width description, let's go ahead and go down here and do paragraph, and then color white. And now you can see that. And it also changed this color over here because I'm selecting the paragraph up here. We could revert it. Let's go ahead and make that change. Inspect element. And this is kind of the one with a class of H3. So let's go ahead and change that as well. Full with header, description, paragraph with an H3, we're going to say that the color is going to be that color. Of course, at the end, we need to close it with a semicolon and refresh. And I think that looks a little bit better as far as the content for this header goes. Now let's take a look over here. Inspect element. Let's see what's happening up here. I think our navigation, we added a margin bottom of 2.618. Let's see what happens if we change that header margin bottom to 1.618 and see how it looks with the rest of the site. So header margin bottom 1.618, refresh. Okay, I think that looks a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. Let's go ahead and go over here. Okay, fine. Okay. I think this looks a little bit off just because of the space that we have in here. But again, that's one way that we can do so to make this kind of look and kind of pop out a little bit more. If we didn't want this to be 100% width, if you look at 100% height, look, when we get here, it is 100% height of the browser. We could also make changes. Let's go ahead and change that back to 2.618. We could also make changes to it, like for example, full width header, instead of a minimum height of 100 view height. So we can do something like padding, and then the top 2.618 REM and 0. Yes. And that would add 2.618 REM to the top, 2.618 REM to the bottom, and 0 to the left and right. And that will make it a little bit smaller. Or we could also do margin top negative 1.618 REM, and see, that would actually bring this section up a little bit more, closer to that area up there. Okay, so let's take a look at this and inspect it a little bit more, make sure everything is looking as it should. We have that paragraph, perfect. There's no other spacings. So I think that looks pretty good for our projects. And of course, we need to change some of the content here. Hopefully we don't have as much content as what we have here. So I'm gonna lower that amount of content. And of course, we're gonna call it project 1. And say something about project 1, little paragraph or kind of describing what we did with the project. And now we can actually go back in and start using our grid system. So here we're going to do div class container, div class row, and div class call extra small 12. Okay. And here, if we wanted to, we can have maybe a longer paragraph defining the overview of the project. So let's go ahead and do that. Going to go over here. So we'll say something like an H2 and call it overview. Of course, within paragraph tags. And then if we go to the project 1, we refresh. Now we have our overview and information here. That just displayed also, if you look in here, this is kind of too tight compared to in relationship to this content up here. So let's go ahead and let's do margin bottom 2.618 REM. And then if we refresh, I think that looks a little bit cleaner, makes it easier to read. So we have overview. In this case, another thing that we can also do is so we have that overview there. We can do div class row, and then div class call extra small 12 and call MD 4. So actually small 6 in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to use an image, and we can do something like image project 1 alt before project started. And then because I do want it to kind of fit a specific pattern, I wanted to look kind of what we did on the homepage, that we did these graphics like this. So I am going to go into our homepage and I am going to copy that. So let me go over here. We have our rating stars. All right. So this is our white image right here. I'm going to copy that here. And we're going to say something like before project started. And then I am going to duplicate this. And then I am going to go and get, for example, the second image. This is how the project started, how the project looks now that it's being updated. Now, after all our efforts, this is how it looks, or whatever, right? If we go to project 1, then you can see here. Okay, so then we have those two images. We can say something along the lines of div class row h2 screenshots. There you go. And then we refresh, and now we have our screenshots here. Oh, I forgot to add this div class call extra small 12, and then add that here so that I can use the proper grid system. So this is what we're going to copy and say something like, this is what we had before, right? Maybe a little description of what it was before, and then maybe this is the description of what is going to be after our image here. So then we have that information there. We could even, but it wouldn't have to be inside of that, that white image tag. It needs to be outside of it. Let me move that outside. Project 1. Okay, perfect. Okay, if we refresh our page, then we have a little bit of the description there. We can even spice it up a little bit more and add like an H3 and say before, H3 after. And then we have before and after, kind of showing and displaying the content in there. Another thing that we could also do is, let's go ahead and I am going to close each one of these divs and keep them as separate. Okay. At the end of this one, let's go ahead and create another div class container. Div class call, row. Remember, container, row, and columns. So div class call extra small 12. And then here we're going to have an H2 and say something along the lines of, say, audience. And then in our audience, we could potentially use, say, for example, one of our elements that we created in the past. See, like we can create use one of our nested lists for our audience. So we have this. For example, we can say audience, we can say something along the lines of age groups. And then we can have that information in here. Who was our target audience as we were creating this, our website. So for example, we can talk about gender, we can talk about age group, we can talk about income level, maybe education. We can talk a lot about different aspects here when it comes down to the audience. And now we can go in here and see, we can refresh and we have that information about our audience. And then we can also have maybe another section just displaying our approach to how we build this website. So here again, sometimes it's easier to copy and paste. So approach, we can have that there. Get another kind of quote here, like another blurb on what we think our approach was and how it worked, when we were building this for our client. Here you go. We have our approach, and then we can actually say something along the lines of, see, we created this project. Now let's see what our client says, right? So for example, here we can say something like the testimonial, right? And then we can come here and we can go to our testimonial container that we created right here. All right. And let's go ahead and paste that in here. Testimonial. So we have, let's go ahead and let's copy like a little quote from here. Quote goes here. Someone famous. So I'm going to say my name because I'm famous. Just kidding. And then my title, say UI designer level 5, something like that. And then we can say something like that too, UI designer level 5. If we go back here, we can refresh, and now we have our little testimonial in here. Let's take a look down here and see why we have that background color in there. Why do we have, footer? Okay. So we need to say background color, transparent, color, inherit. Very good. So we need to fix those two elements here for our block quote footer. So let's go over here to our CSS. There we go. We refresh. And now we have our quote actual right here. Do I like the one that is center aligned, that is aligned like that? Maybe I like this one that is center. So text center. Let's go ahead and add that here. And if I go to the site, yeah, I like this much better. And I might not even have to say testimonial because this automatically looks like a testimonial. I can just say something like along the lines like this. And then it has my information in here. Let's take a look down here and see if there's anything else that we need to change. Okay. So we also, by adding these 5 REM top, it also affected that up here. So margin top, 1.618 REM only. So we need to fix that into our CSS as well. In our block quote footer, margin top, 1.61 REM, 18 REM. And then we refresh, and that looks a lot better here. Yes, much, much better. So just like that, for example, now we created a project page that has all of this information in it. And I think it looks really, really good. Now, let's go ahead and take a look and see how it looks when it's responsive. So now we're making this smaller. All right. And let's take a look in here. Okay, so we have our title up there, and it should be responsive here. There you go. So our title is responsive. It's still 100% width here. It's 100% right there. And then when it goes down here, it doesn't break into the other two break areas, but it has that size there. If I wanted to, we can go up here to our CSS style, go back to our container, copy this, go all the way to the bottom where we have our styles for our full width header area. There you go. And then here's where we have our description value. And all we'll have to do is something like this. Change that. Change that. Change that. Change that. Okay. And if we now break it in here, see, it's breaking just along the same values as what the main content areas are breaking as well. We could do it more efficiently, but I think this works to kind of skip the component separate from everything else. As far as what we've been doing, anything that is full width, we don't have to worry about it because as you've seen, this already breaks. Let's take a look at these screenshots here. When we come in smaller, okay, because we broke them into those areas and then they go full width. I think that looks great. We have our audience, our approach, and of course we have our quote down below, which I think looks really neat. All right. So with that, we've created these projects. Now, you may be asking yourself, why didn't we use a background image and use, for example, the background tag on the CSS to make this background image? And here is why. Because it's so much easier to do the following. Take a look at this. We change to H. So that's going to be project 2. Right? Project 3. And project 4. So we have all of these projects here. Let's go ahead and open them up. So we have project 2. Not the image, but down here. Project 2. All right. Project 2, we have it right here. We can change these to project 2. Of course, we change our project name up here to project 2. And then our image that we have here, see, we can just replace that image and again say something along the lines of project 2. It also helps us give a description of that image. So if anybody that is not able to see or be able to make a reference on the page and they're using like a screen reader, they should be able to come here and they'll be able to hear that this is an image kind of displaying that type of content. And because we're actually wanting to display our content, that's why we're making that happen this way, which again, if you look at how easy it is to update this background image, rather than every time I have a new background image, I will have to open my CSS file. And then once I do that, then I'll have to save it and then deploy it again and whatnot. So this is much easier if we have it this way. And see, for example, I can go here to project 2, project 3. See, we have project 3. And then project 4, I don't have an image for project 4, so I'm going to reuse the one from project 1. Just kind of like the same way that I did on the home page. And then just as simple, we've created this page where we have all of this content here. So we have project 1, project, okay. So in the home page, I didn't change those projects. Let's go ahead and change those. I think I was feeling lazy that day that we were creating that page. So let me make those changes there. We'll have to reopen those in just a little bit. We won't need the app.js, and we'll keep projects open for a little bit. And let's go down here. So we have project 1, project 2, and project 3. If we refresh, if we go to project 2, we have project 2 there. If we go to project 3, we have project 3 there. And then if, for example, you wanted to make this image be be bottom align or top align, we've already done it before. So please take the time to create those extra classes to be able to, align the content as you would want it to be aligned. So we have there that information. We have project 1, 2, 3. Again, we have 1, 2, 3 here. 2, 3. And then I don't know if we had a project 4 here. I think I just moved it to project 1, which it's fine. But we do have a project 4 up here, so that's why I wanted to create that. All right. The one thing that we would like, I think will be a good idea to do in this site is to actually, on those pages, on the project pages, is to do the following. So let's go ahead and open project 1. And at the very bottom, I think we should have div class container, div class row, div class call, extra small, 12. We're going to do a paragraph with a class of text center, right? And then what we're going to do, let's go ahead and find our buttons. And let's do our secondary button for this one. Sorry. Again, view, toggle words. All right. And then here we're going to set the name of the website that we want the users to go to see their project. And here we're going to say something like visit the live product website. Okay. I am going to copy these. So now if I go to, say, project 1 up here, when I go to the very bottom, visit the live product website, and I need to do something else here. I don't wanna make my users leave my site, so we're going to use target blank, refresh, and when I click on it, then it takes them to the site that I created and kind of shows them how it looks like. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and copy this, and we're going to paste it. And ideally, of course, you would have different projects that you're showcasing for your users, right? So then with that, then you will have different links, and maybe you have different names or different information that you would like to use in that area right there. So again, we have project 3, 2, 1, perfect, and we refresh, and then we have our projects, and then, for example, there you go. Now, one thing that we could also do here is in our projects, we're saying, so for example, this project 1 is a web design project. We could click on project 1, and instead of saying about, we can say web design. So maybe that's another thing to kind of keep things consistent that we can do in our site. Web design. See, web design project 1, and you catch my drift. We can do that for project 2, 3, and 4. So let's do that real quick. Close that. App design. Project 3, I think, is videography. videography, and project 4, I believe, was app design as well. Okay. So again, if we now go to say project 3, videography, project 3, and then the information, I think that will be a little bit cleaner as you're kind of building the site. And just like I mentioned before, when we were building typography, I really only use, between H1, H2, H3, and sometimes I use H4, but it's very casually when I use H4. As you've seen on this site, we really focus on those first 3. I think we use H4 when it came to about for each one of these roles right here. So that's when I use H4, but it's not something that I use often enough. Anything H5, I don't really use. H6, I don't use either. But if you need it, then I would definitely encourage you to create styles specifically for those elements there. So with that, I think we've concluded the creation of our project page, our individual project page. I think they look really good. It has as much information as we can possibly give somebody, like for example, kind of maybe an image displaying in large, kind of what we've done. You can make that a video if you wanted to. You can have, again, more description about it. We have information on the overview, screenshots. Maybe if you wanted to, you could right off the bat have a link to that project all the way up here on the top of the page, rather than the bottom of the page as well. But we're using pretty much everything that we've created, even our testimonial component, and then of course our buttons, we have been using those, and our color scheme as well is being applied here. So again, with that, we're going to conclude this video. In our next video, we're going to talk about our contact us form, and kind of just style it. It's going to be beyond the scope of this series of videos to actually program that form on the back end. We're just going to try to talk about optimization and what can we do to make sure that our form is understood by everybody and that it's ADA compliant, and maybe add some other styles and whatnot that we can apply to that form to make it easier for users to fill it in and avoid a little bit of form fatigue. So we'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, happy coding.